Hi, this is Terry from Terry Gets It Together. I want to share with you a little bit about my journey as a widow. I call it the W word. I don't like to use that word. But just some things that I've learned so that if you're ever in this position or you're in this position now, spouse generically, because anytime you're in a committed relationship and your partner passes away, you grieve just like anybody who's married, or if you have children together. But so when I say spouse, like I said, I mean anybody in a committed relationship with a partner that they are committed to in life. Last year I read an essay called 10 Things I Wish Someone Had Told Me About Becoming a Widow, by Stacy Feintuch, or Feintuch. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. But I saw it on Facebook and I was really interested in it. I'm interested in other people's experiences. Everybody handles this type of thing differently, and I'm interested in hearing other people's perspectives on it who have actually been through it. So I read Stacy's story and her list. It was a really good one. Sheryl Sandberg has also done a really good one. When her husband unexpectedly passed away when they were on vacation, Sheryl Sandberg, who's with Facebook, she did an amazing description of what it feels like when your spouse passes away unexpectedly and all the feelings that you go through. So I thought, well, every time I read one of these, I think about what would I say to someone, because I think everyone grieves differently, and I wanted to share with you the top 10 things that I think you should expect if your spouse passes away. So some background for those of you that don't know, my husband Gary passed away in 2001, and we had been married for 20 years, well, just short of 20 years. He died on June 3rd of 2001, and our 20th anniversary would have been on June 20th. So I just say 20 years when people ask. We had been together longer than 20 years, and so I just considered it, we were married 20 years. We had 2 children, and my son had just turned 15 a couple of weeks before my husband passed away, and my daughter was 11. So my husband died of a heart attack at home while the kids and I were at my parents'. My mom was going through lumpectomy, and we went to go help out, and we were gone for the week, and my husband passed away alone at home. And it's been 17 years since then, and lots of grief and lots of amazing, wonderful times too. And we have great memories of him. There were things that I would do differently and things that I would do the same. We know people who have had a family member or a friend or a coworker pass away, and we want to help them. This is not for you. I cannot tell you what to say. I wish I could give you the words to make them feel better and make you less uncomfortable about it. But it just is what it is. And you have to find your own words, and you have to just say what's in your heart. Don't try to make them feel better. They won't. And they just need to know that you're going to be there for them whenever they need you and that you care about them. So this list is for someone who has experienced this, either as a widow or a widower. And I just don't like those words. They just don't roll off your tongue, and they give a connotation. I'll explain that in a minute. I do want to share some of the things that I learned and let other people know what you might expect in the future after your spouse passes away. Number 1, death sucks, no matter how the person dies. So I've had people ask me about the way that my husband died. Like I said, he died alone. He died unexpectedly at home when we were out of town. So it was very quick. And death kind of makes people say things that are incredibly stupid. I've done it myself. I'm not making fun of anybody. But you're so uncomfortable and not knowing what to say that sometimes you say the absolute wrong things. Like, do you wish you'd been able to say goodbye? And I tend to say, no, I wish I didn't have to say goodbye. In my head, I don't say it to them. I'm not trying to make people feel bad when they make mistakes about how to talk to someone who's had a spouse die. But my mom died over a period of 5 years, suffering from breast cancer and a lot of pain. And we had plenty of opportunities to say goodbye. Neither one of those experiences was harder or easier. They're both awful. So, no, there isn't a good way for them to die. Number two, people don't know what to do. As I said, it's such an uncomfortable situation. Everybody handles death differently, and people just don't know what to say to you when they see you. I know widows who cry uncontrollably all the time for months, and they need constant support. There are other people that you would never know that their spouse had passed away, and they seem as if they're okay on the outside because they want to be strong for whoever, either their family, their kids, whoever. But there's others, who every time you say, are you okay? And they give you every detail of everything that's happened for the last 3 months, and people start shying away from them. But be patient with people. Be patient with the person who's passed away, but also the widow. You got to be patient with other people. They're trying to help. They don't know what to say. They love you. They care about you, but they just don't know what to say. I found that the people who say to me, "How are you doing?" And I, at first, wanted to scream at them and say, "Well, how the hell do you think I'm doing?" But I realized that they care about me, and I just needed to say, you know what? I'm looking for a new normal. We're getting along. We're getting up every day, and every day it gets a little bit easier. So just be patient with people as they try to interact with you, and not knowing what to say. It can be awkward. So next, number 3, nothing is normal. It's not going to be normal. I just wanted it to be normal. I wanted my normal life with my normal kids and my normal family and my normal husband and my normal work. Everything, but nothing was normal. There's nothing normal about it. In the same week that my husband passed away, they reorganized my area of the country that at work, and I got a boss who just happened to be one of my best friends, and that was weird. So I just kind of gave up on trying to hope that anything was going to be normal. It didn't happen. You just have to figure out your new normal. You have to figure out that the look, even though you hate it, that look of pity on people's faces when they come towards you, you imagine that the people in the grocery store, you kind of get angry, like, why are all these shiny, happy people having a great day and my life sucks? And, my husband just died. Don't you crazy people know, what's going on in my life? And you're all happy and in the grocery store and acting normal. And I envy them. That song by the Weepies, The World Spins Madly On. I never realized how absolutely correct that song is. Some of the things that made me crazy, the smell of flowers always reminded me of the funeral home, and I wanted to just be able to smell the flowers and not think about all that stuff. But then slowly over time, everything kind of became, like I said, the new normal. And we just created for ourselves a new daily routine, a new family routine. And I'm not saying there weren't struggles along the way. Holidays and things like that were different, and we had to make them different. And I got to tell you, my kids each handled it differently than I did. They handled it differently from each other. I handled it differently than them. We all had our own way of dealing with it, and none of it was the same, and we had to figure all that out. But so nothing is normal, and it won't be until you create your new normal. Number 4, the first year is the worst. All year long, there's reminders of things that you did with each other the previous year. At Christmas time, I thought, okay, this time at Christmas time last year, Gary was here, and we were making plans to go to his parents in Alabama or something like that. All year long, we came up on these milestones, and it made me and the kids remember, he's not here. This is what we were doing last year. It won't be the same this year. And then the days leading up to when he died, were very much of a struggle. I didn't want to see people. I didn't want to talk to people about him. They all knew it was coming, and they didn't like it any more than I did. So, but then once we hit, like I hit June 3rd, it seemed to get a little bit easier every day. We had the milestones and the memories of the previous year were all about things that we did, and some of it was tough. And it allowed us to make decisions about maybe doing it differently. But the first year was absolutely the hardest, right up to the anniversary of the date that he passed away. And then like I said, it continued to get a little bit easier. Number 5, your real friends know what you need. And it may not be that you know what you need. So I have this story that I use as an example of this all the time. I was traveling for work, and it was not very long after my husband had died, and I was questioning, am I doing the right things? I had a middle schooler and a high schooler, and they were typical teenagers, and my daughter was late getting home from school. And when I was traveling out of state and on my way home, every day, she was supposed to walk home and call me as soon as she got home. And she hadn't called, and I was burning up her phone, and she wasn't answering, and I was getting scared. I live in a really safe area, but when you're a parent and you can't get a hold of your child and they're not home when they're supposed to be, you worry. And I was getting upset, and I was making a bigger deal than it needed to be. Rather than calming down and figuring it out, I was panicking, and I called my friend Kay. And she very quietly listened to me freak out for a while and didn't say anything. And once said, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to say the F word 10 times. And I laughed. And then I said the F word 10 times. And you know what? It did make me feel better. And she was there for me so many times. When I needed to freak out. And it became, to this day, almost 20 years later, that's our thing, is when we start to freak out about anything or panic a little bit, we say, it's time to say the F word, and we do. So, real friends know what you need. Number 6, your kids and his family are hurting too. You are not the only person that is grieving the loss of this human being who was in your life. And I lost my best friend. My kids lost their dad. And his parents lost their child. And his brother lost his brother. There are a lot of people that grieve the loss of someone. You can't focus only on yourself. And as hard as it is, and this may be controversial to say, but you got to be there to support other people even when you're grieving. My kids needed support. And my mother-in-law needed a lot of support, and she and I were not terribly close. We were friends, but I wouldn't consider her a nurturing person, and we had some struggles over the years. But she said to me at one point, right after 9/11, she said, you lost your husband, and you can get another husband, but I can never get another son. And my immediate instinct was to go back at her and say, we're not in a grieving war. I'm not trying to out-grieve you. Why are you acting like that? Why is your grief more important than my grief? And I didn't. I just listened and said, I know. Because, no parent should ever have to bury their child. It's got to be the most horrible thing in the world. And I feel for her. And my immediate reaction was to say, wait a minute, my grief's more important than your grief, which is what she was doing. It didn't help either one of us for me to do that, so I didn't. My kids needed me, and they sometimes needed me to make hard decisions. And one of the things that I needed to do was realize that I didn't know it all. I didn't know anything about this or how to handle it. And there came a point where I felt like, we needed to get counseling. And they fought me tooth and nail. and I forced them to go, and I believe it helped a lot. It helped one of them more than the other one. We didn't do it very long. We were able to work things through, and the counselor said, I think you guys are going to be fine. But I had to admit that I didn't have all the answers of how to get my children through this, and we figured it out. So again, you got to sometimes be there to support other people through their grieving process, even when you're grieving yourself. Number 7, the W word. I don't like this word. I don't like the widow word. In fact, I don't like referring to it because I don't like labels. And if I say widow, it immediately puts this image of somebody, usually some gray-haired old lady. Oh my gosh, I got gray hair and I'm an old lady. But, it puts this image of them in people's minds. And all of a sudden, I became the widow. And I was way more than that. And I just wanted to be Terry. And I didn't want to be classified as a widow. The only time I ever use that is on legal documents. Other than that, it became, I used to worry about it, and I used to worry way more than now what people think. But it bothered me when people would say, "Are you married?" Like, I live in the South. What church do you go to, and are you married? Are like the 2 most common questions that people are going to ask you when you meet them. And people would say, "Are you married?" And I always would say, "Well, my husband died a couple months ago, or a couple years ago, or whatever it was." And, and it started off this weird, awkward conversation where they didn't know what to say. And I didn't know what to say then. So I just got to the point where I was like, well, it's not really any of their business what my situation is. I want to share and make friends. But so when somebody now says, "Are you married?" I just say, no, I'm single. I don't go into, I'm not divorced, but I'm single. And I talk about my kids, and I talk about, my life. And at some point, I sometimes say, well, my late husband used to do this, or my late husband used to say something else. And it just avoids the awkward conversation that it creates. And I encourage you to find what works for you. I identified so much with being married after 20 years that I didn't want to give that up. There's this certain label that you put on yourself about being married. And again, it makes people think a certain way about you. But again, you just got to get over the whole thing. If you're going to say you don't like labels, then don't label yourself. Number 8. Your spouse was a human being, and you should remember them that way. My husband was a human with all the faults of a human male or female. I mean, I don't want to get sexist here, but he had some faults. He had some things that drove me crazy. He could make me madder than anyone. He was messy. He left a trail of clothes everywhere he went. Didn't pick them up. He was that guy that dropped the clothes on the floor right next to the dirty clothes hamper. Drove me nuts. He drank, sometimes too much. He smoked. I didn't like that. But he was a true partner in every sense of the word. I've always said I'm in for relationships going forward because I want somebody who's an equal partner, who supports me, who I can support, who is my best friend. Not somebody who tries to control me or that I have to control. I don't want to be somebody else's mom. I want a real relationship. And I had that before. So I'm not giving up easily on that dream of having it again. But so after he died, people would put up pictures in their house of him, but they hadn't done that when he was alive. And when, you know how you have those conversations about, let me tell you what my husband did last night. They would jump right in on that conversation previously and criticize him themselves for things that he did. I gotta tell you, every one of my children's birthdays up until they were about 5 years old, he slept through them because he would fall asleep on the couch wherever we were having the party, and he would miss half of them. I have so many pictures of my husband asleep on the couch at a birthday party. And he had people that criticized him for that. Those same people made excuses after he died. Drove me nuts. Um, he was not a perfect human being, and to remember him as anything but anything but a normal human being, it just does a disservice to him. It's not respectful for him. He would laugh at those same people who were doing that. So just be realistic about, don't be hypocritical. Just be realistic about who the person was and all the things that you loved them for and the things you didn't like about them too. You need to talk about those. Uh, anyway, like I said, so they were humans, and go ahead and remember them as such. Number 9, your spouse is going to be a part of your life forever. And especially if you have children with them, you can move on and you can live your life every day knowing that they used to be in your life. And your children are going to remember them forever. My grandson would be so enamored of my husband. He would call him Poppy. We share stories all the time. He's been a little bit confused about this man called Poppy because he's never met him, obviously, and I wish he had. But he knows he was a firefighter. He knows that he liked to fish. He knows that his mommy's daddy loved them all, and that they loved him, and that he had passed away of a heart attack. So he's starting to get old enough to understand a little bit more. But he does have questions. So he's always asking about mommy's daddy, or my Poppy was a firefighter. He'll say things like that. So so we do. I talk about him a lot, and I think that's a good thing. Also, a few days after my husband passed away, my daughter, who was 11, just out of the blue, looked at me and said, who's going to give me away at my wedding? And I just choked. I tried to fight the tears, and I just said, well, you know what? We'll figure that out when it comes time. Well, it came time. And she did a lot of thinking and soul searching about it. She ended up asking my sister's husband, Greg, her uncle, to give her away. What I did was had little buttons made with his picture on it. They were tiny. They were like 1-inch buttons. And it was just a picture of him. And I gave one to Greg to put on his lapel as he walked her down the aisle. I gave one to her to pin on her bouquet so that her dad was with her. And then I also took his badge. He had a retired firefighter's badge. And I gave that to her, and she put it inside of her wedding dress. And so we all felt like he was with us, and he did walk her down the aisle. And then number 10, and this is a kind of a cliche, and everybody says it, but it's true. You will be happy again. You'll never forget, but you will be happy. And early on, we laughed a lot. In fact, my brother had me cracking up the day of the funeral, almost to the level of inappropriate. But it's the way my brother shows love, is to make you laugh. And I think so many times about that if I hadn't laughed, I would just have cried all day long. And my husband wouldn't have liked that. He would have wanted us to laugh. And you find yourself, when you're getting really down, you find yourself laughing about things, and you think, oh, should I be laughing? Well, you should be doing whatever you need to do, or whatever you are doing, and you'll be fine. And slowly you laugh a lot more. There's a lot of funny stuff that happens. But you just work through it, and you tell stories, and you laugh some more, and it's okay. And like I said, you make new memories, you find your new normal, and you move forward, but you don't ever forget, and you always honor the person. All in all, I think my kids' lives, as well as mine, have been happy with a few sad times. They were big sad times, but they were few and far between, and we're really lucky about that. But all in all, isn't that the way everybody grows up? Isn't that the way all families are? Is you have happy times, and then there's some sad times in there too, and you just figure out how to deal with it. So that is my 10 things to expect when your spouse dies. And I hope these have been helpful. If you enjoyed this, it's kind of weird to say enjoyed. I hope this has been helpful. If you found this video helpful, please absolutely give it a thumbs up. Leave me some questions or comments that you might have. I'd be happy to answer anything. As you've heard me say before, pretty transparent, and I'm pretty honest and direct. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about this situation. Absolutely subscribe to my channel, and like I said, like the video and comment, and then come back and I'll share more with you. Thanks. Have a great day.